Disney and Pixar, the two behemoths of Western animation. Their journeys couldn't have been more different, and their current reality is worlds apart. But how could a young, experimental studio make ripples in the industry and potentially dethrone the master of Western animation? It's more complicated than you think, but let's get into it. See, Disney and Pixar have a complex relationship, to put it mildly. They started working together in the late 1980s, and in 1991 announced an agreement to make and distribute 3 films together. Pixar making and Disney distributing. They ended up making the insanely well-received Toy Story, and the rest is kind of history. Pixar was so successful that Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney in 2005, decided that they needed to acquire them. That's how pivotal Pixar was and would continue being for Disney. Since then, Pixar has been a part of Disney, but most people forget that they're separate entities with their own creative teams and processes. And that shows in the huge differences between Disney and Pixar animated movies since they started working together. But let's give a bit of context on how each of them is doing. This honestly shocked me when I saw it, but Pixar has seriously been releasing hit after hit after hit since 1995, with barely any misses, with 13 of their 24 qualifying movies being either nominated or winning Best Animated Feature. Also 18 out of their entire 26 movie catalog getting more than 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. And not only did they get critical acclaim, Pixar has been making a ton of money on their movies, with highlights like Finding Dory, Incredibles 2, Toy Story 3 and 4 all making ridiculous amounts. While we know that Disney has had a lot of flops, recently at least, how is it possible that Pixar has completely outshined Disney for basically 30 years? Well, there's a few big reasons, but we'll get to the biggest of them all later in the video. See, animation has always been one of the biggest differences between them. Pixar was a studio that propelled 3D animation to the forefront of Western media in the 90s, not only creating and perfecting the technology to easily make 3D films, but also by showing to the world that 2D wasn't the only way animation could be done, bringing forth a new animated trend that audiences loved. It's the reason it was so successful with its first releases, with the media raving about the new style and everyone being so enamored by the novelty. On the other hand, most of Disney's history, they've stuck to traditional hand-drawn 2D animation. And back when Pixar was getting started, it was super easy to tell the difference between a Disney movie and a Pixar movie. But humor me, let's just play a little game. Tell me which studio these movies are from. Yeah, not that easy anymore to the untrained eye, huh? Over the years, Disney has completely abandoned what made it unique animation-wise, and instead reverted to what was working for its younger brother, solely 3D movies. Pixar started a massive trend in animation. Disney had no choice but to piggyback on it and copy it. Completely shamelessly, might I add. So as much as I love Pixar, and I think Pixar had a great impact on continuing to popularize animation, I gotta say I do kinda hate them for influencing everyone to do only 3D animation for so damn long. Nevertheless, Pixar has stayed true to its style that so many loved its movies for, while Disney, instead of being creative and innovative, chose to copy that animation style, which just detracts from the originality of Disney films recently, in my opinion at least. Pixar's willingness to innovate and experiment wasn't only capped at the animation though, it's a value that was present throughout the studio. Ed Catmull, the Pixar co-founder, said that you get creative people, you bet big on them, you give them enormous leeway and support, and you provide them with an environment in which they can get honest feedback from everyone. That was the big edge for Pixar. Their employees were allowed to be creative, they were allowed to fail and experiment and innovate, which was the secret reason Pixar completely out-creatived Disney. They weren't afraid to do things that went against the mold. A story about a rat cook, a story about an old man flying away in his house, a story about the emotions going on in someone's head, a mostly silent robot film in WALL-E. These are unconventional, weird-ass ideas, but that's what makes them great and unique. Pixar actually ingrained an interesting concept throughout their business: the failed elevator pitch. The elevator pitch is a famous concept in business which states that you should be able to pitch an idea to executives in the time that it takes to ride the elevator. Snappy, quick, and effective. Catmull turned that on its head, saying that if you can pass that test, your idea is probably derivative of what's been done before. Ambitious, unlikely ideas, like a rat that wants to cook or an old man who floats away on a balloon, can't be summed up in 30 seconds. But they can go on to become Oscar-winning Pixar films. This is one of the ways they tested for good ideas, and it's brilliant. Because of the environment where employees were allowed to experiment and innovate, Pixar was always willing and able to explore more complex themes compared to Disney. Disney usually makes movies with universal and common themes, like love, bravery, not giving up, themes that can appeal to anybody and that don't require too much complexity of thought, which I love Disney for, by the way. Pixar stories, on the other hand, are beautiful and captivating, but they're also deep and thought-provoking in a lot of ways. They tackle themes like grief in Up, existentialism in WALL-E, and life purpose in Soul, just to name a few examples. They don't shy away from delivering these very complex messages in the package of an animated movie. And for the most part, they do it extremely well. Just like Studio Ghibli, which I talked about in my last video, they don't dumb down their movies for the audience, rather giving us the respect and benefit of the doubt we deserve. What truly makes Pixar a different studio and a different brand of filmmaker are these layers that they stack on top of fantastical stories and fun premises. It allows Pixar to use The Incredibles to explore marital problems and fears of inadequacy, to use a story about a balloon house to explore the fear of letting go. This is the main reason Pixar has been so consistently excellent since it started making movies. Another interesting difference between these two Goliaths of animation is the stories they make their movies off of. This was beautifully highlighted by a famous Disney animator, Glenn Keane, who once said this: "If you reduced Pixar to a phrase, it would be, wouldn't it be cool if? Like if a kid was looking at their toy, what if the toy could talk? All their films are like this. If you reduce the Disney films, it would be Once Upon a Time." See, Disney's really built their success on remaking stories of old. Whether it be fairy tales by the Grimm brothers, short stories, novels, screenplays in the case of Peter Pan, they've done an amazing job adapting existing works and making them entertaining for a universal audience. Even though some of the fairy tales it's adapted have existed for centuries, it's Disney's versions most people think about when they hear Cinderella or The Little Mermaid. Pixar, on the other hand, is in the business of asking, what if? Their stories are original and uniquely Pixar, and that's something that has always resonated with audiences. But don't get me wrong, you might think I just like criticizing Disney, but these videos are just a testament to Disney's greatness and the excellence we expect as an audience. While other animation studios have risen and fallen, Disney alone has remained at the front of the pack for a century. Though not without its ups and downs, Disney is a constant. Pixar would not exist without Disney, and the style of its films bears the influence of the groundwork that Walt laid. While Pixar has done an excellent job inspiring us all, I'm more than confident Disney will have a comeback for the ages sooner than we think.